Part 1. Basic Neumes and Pneumatic Elements. Single note Neumes. The purpose of this series is to introduce the notation of some of the oldest sources, which are over 1,000 years old. The most widely used style of chant interpretation remains the Solem method, which is over 100 years old. Whether you are used to the Solem style of chant or some other style, or if you're brand new to Gregorian chant, it will be useful in the course of this presentation to contrast the old notation, or Neumes, with the 20th century editions. The Solem method interprets a normal syllabic value as short and indivisible, contradicting all of the older sources, which unanimously showed the normal syllabic value to be long, with short syllables as the exception rather than the rule. In this series, we'll examine the Messine and St. Gall notations used in the most complete and reliable 10th century manuscripts, the long gradual, the St. Gall cantatorium, and the Einsiedel gradual. The long gradual uses the Messine or Metz Neumes, the cantatorium and Einsiedel gradual, the St. Gall. The Vatican edition uses a square punctum for single note Neumes, that is, where a whole syllable is set to a single note. The notes transcribed with a plain punctum in the Vatican edition have several forms in the adiastomatic notation. Adiastomatic means unheightened and refers to staffless or lineless musical notation. In the St. Gall Neumes, the tractulus indicates a relatively low note. In the Messine Neumes, the tractulus is also called an unsinus, which means hook, and is used for nearly all single long notes, whether low or high. The Virgo, which means rod, indicates a relatively high note. In St. Gall, the Virgo may be either long or short according to context, but it is normally long when used as a single note Neume or with an epicema. In Metz, it is always long and used only in combination, never as an entire syllable. In both notations, the punctum, which means point, is used for short notes. In St. Gall, for relatively low notes. Remember that St. Gall uses the Virgo for relatively high notes, regardless of length. Rarely, St. Gall uses a gravis to indicate an especially low note. The Eryskus is a note with several forms, each having a curved or wavy appearance. Some scholars believe it indicates an ornamental upper auxiliary note. All of the preceding notes are also used in combination, that is, as elements or components within longer Neumes. Notes used only in combination. Like the Messine Virgo, the following notes are used only in combination, never for an entire syllable. The punctum inclinatum, diamond, lozenge, or rhombus, is used in the Vatican edition for two or more descending notes. The ancient manuscripts normally use the plain punctum or tractulus or unsinus in these instances. The quilisma in both St. Gall and Metz is the same sign used contemporaneously by grammarians as a question mark. There are several theories concerning the interpretation of the quilisma. It is a short note, lightly sung, and indicates lengthening of the preceding note, according to Dom Maccaro. 2. It signifies two notes, a short repetition of the preceding note plus a short passing tone leading to a higher note, according to Father Wollertz and Dom Murray. 3. It is a sort of trill, mordant, or tremolo. 4. It is a light and very short note of more diminished value, according to Dom Cardine. 5. It is a precautionary indication of an ascending skip or leap and not a note at all, according to Professor Japisch. 6. It is a sliding ornamental note, portamento or schleifer, that takes part of the duration of the preceding long note, according to Dr. Van Biesen. The Unison Tristropher appears as a group of several puncta in the Vatican edition. In Metz, its normal form has a lengthened final note, variously called an unsinus, tractulus, lineolo, or simply stroke. The hooked unsinus is rarely used in this context. In St. Gall, the Unison Tristropher normally has an epicema on the final note, which is a sign of lengthening. Notice that only the final note is written long, and not even the final note in every context. For repeated long notes, the Virga is used in St. Gall, and the tractulus or unsinus in Metz. Take a moment to review the single note Neumes covered so far. In the next video, we'll look at two note groups. written evidence for the decline and loss of the authentic traditional rhythm. All the longs must be equally long, all the shorts of equal brevity. In accordance with the length durations, let there be formed short beats, so that they be neither more nor less, but one always twice as long as the other. Commemoratio brevis, early 10th century. In the Neumes, it is necessary that you pay close attention where the proportional shorter duration is to be measured, and where, on the contrary, the longer duration, lest you execute as quick and short what the authority of the masters has determined should be longer and more extended. Nor should we heed those who say there is no reason whatsoever for our making now the quicker duration, now the more prolonged one, in a chant with a naturally disposed rhythm. Bruno of Reichenau, early 11th century. In olden times, great care was observed not only by the composers of the chant, but also by the singers themselves to compose and sing proportionally. But this idea has already been dead for a long time, even buried. Arribo, late 11th century. The original chant rhythm, intermingling variously long and short sounds, has yielded since the 11th century to an equalistic execution that has robbed the rhythmic movement of much of its attractiveness and done away with numerous means of expression. Peter Wagner, early 20th century. The rhythmic value of the epicema varies greatly and lends itself to the expression of the most delicate nuances. When it appears above a clivus, for example, it may double the value of the first note, or again, it may indicate merely a delicate touch or the least lingering of the voice. This remark applies to all the rhythmic signs, whether they be modifications of the neume or additions to it, whether they be letters or other signs. The reason is this: the sign, like the neume itself, is influenced by its position, the character of the note to which it is attached, the place of the rhythmic sign in the neume, the relation of the neume to the text, the nature of the rhythm of which it forms a part, the movement and expression of the musical phrase as a whole. All of these are factors which either increase or diminish the value of the rhythmic sign. Dom André Maquereau, early 20th century. As we have seen, Dom Maquereau admits that there were mensuralists, that is, advocates of measured or proportional rhythm, during the Gregorian centuries. It would be interesting if clear evidence could be cited to show that during the same period there were some who were not mensuralists. Dom Gregory Murray, mid-20th century. The interpretive particularities and the finesse of the notation gradually disappeared. Gregorian chant appeared to be, and in fact became, a cantus planus, that is, a chant free of all expressive values. The term plain chant, which so often designates Gregorian chant today, should be discarded because it is based on a false premise. Dom Eugène Cardin, mid-20th century. The theory of nuances is not tenable. We are dealing with nuances of nuances, and that is, of course, nonsense. Between the unsinus and the punctum, different categories of note values must be intended. The semiologist's rejection of mensuralism must rest on a prejudice. What is more, their theory is not very consistent. Jan van Biezen, 21st century.